You ever get a new Bible and can't find anything? Mine's relatively, I've had it for a little while, and I find out that when I go to one particular passage and spend a whole lot of time there, the page gets dog-eared. Not that I intend to be that way, but especially down at the bottom. And I've got Genesis chapter 6, and it's kind of bent, and it don't want to come back. So I'm working on it. Genesis chapter 7, verse number 1. And the Lord said unto Noah, Come thou and all thy house into the ark, for thee have I seen righteous before me in this generation. God doesn't force Noah to come into the ark. He invites him to come into the ark. Come thou into the ark, okay, is what he says. So God's a gentleman. He doesn't force his way upon anybody. He doesn't force you to believe. Belief is to come from you. It's to have faith in God and to trust in God. He could have made us to where we were little robots and where we do everything that he wanted us to do. But he gives us the option. He gives us the, hang on a minute. Okay. He gives us the option to choose him or not. So, come thou into the ark. Maybe I'm reading into this more than is in the scripture, but I get the impression that God's saying, come into the ark, come into me. God's in the ark. Indeed, the ark to me is a picture of the Lord Jesus Christ. And God is in the ark. God is in the Lord Jesus Christ. God is Jesus Christ. And he's saying, come into the ark. He's giving an invitation. Isn't that what happened to you? Were you not invited to come in? God invited you to come in, and you accepted that. If you're saved, you accepted to come into the ark, into Jesus Christ as Lord. Verse number 2, of every clean beast thou shalt take unto thee by sevens, the male and his female, and of the beasts that are not clean by two, the male and his female. By sevens. I've read several different things about what this could mean. Some people say it means 7 pairs. Other people say it's 7 individuals. I don't know, but I have a tendency to believe in 7 pairs. God does things not with an odd man out, okay? And so I believe it's 7 pairs. And notice that there's clean and unclean. This is the book of Genesis. This is the book of beginnings. The definition of clean animals and unclean animals doesn't really happen until Leviticus, which is in Moses' day, which is a considerable time span between this and Moses' day. What does it mean, clean and unclean? How did he know which animals were clean and how did he know which animals were unclean? It's of God. The only explanation that I have is that God somehow made it known to Noah and to his family what were clean and what were unclean. But there's a distinction here. Distinction is clean, or those that are possibly to be used for sacrifice, which we'll see a little bit later on, and those which are not appropriate for sacrifice. There's a distinction in the animals, clean and unclean. There's another distinction in the animals, male and female. It's not 2 males and 2 females, but male and female, okay? There's another distinction here, and that's between those that believe, who go into the ark and ride out the storm below, and those that don't go into the ark, those that refuse. So there's this distinction here, several distinctions. Turn, if you will, to Leviticus chapter 11. Just for a little idea as to clean and unclean. Any ideas as to why God made the definition between the two? I'm open. No ideas? Okay, then you're with me because I don't really understand. Chapter 11, verse number 1, And the Lord spake unto Moses and to Aaron, saying to them, Speak unto the children of Israel, saying, These are the beasts which ye shall eat among all the beasts which are on the earth. Well, first distinction is God decided to tell man that there are certain animals that weren't appropriate for him to eat. If you go through the list and go down through the list, it talks about several of the different animals. One talks about swine, and in verse number 6, it talks about the hare, rabbits. If you eat rabbit and it's not cooked properly, you can get tularemia, whatever it's called, rabbit problems from eating rabbits. And swine, you get trichinosis from eating swine that's not cooked right. So I think maybe God's protecting mankind. I don't know. Whatsoever parteth the hoof and is cloven-footed and cheweth the cud among the beasts, that she shall eat. And it goes on and gives further descriptions of different birds that can be eaten and different crawling things that can be eaten and those that shouldn't be eaten. I believe it's God's way of protecting man from being sick, from having disease. Okay. Verse number 3. Of fowls of the air, back in Genesis 6, verse number 3. Of fowls also of the air by sevens, male and female, to keep seed alive upon the face of all the earth. A lot of seed propagation in plant life comes from birds dropping seeds as they eat. If they're flying, they drop the seeds. We've got these little trees called Rosa Sharon on our property. We lived in a place in Cumming a number of years ago, and there were Rosa Sharons that were everywhere there, and we took some of the little seedlings and little seed pods and seeds from that property, and we moved to where we're at now, and we planted a couple of Rosa Sharon. Well, we got Rosa Sharon all over the place. I mean, we are inundated with Rosa Sharon. Some purple, some pink, some white, but I mean, they've spread, and we didn't plant them all. I believe some of the birds and some of the animals planted them. And God's saying, keep of 7 of the fowls so that they can plant the seeds. Remember that the whole world is going to be washed out, and that includes plant life, and they're going to have to come back again. Verse number 4, for yet 7 days, and I will cause it to rain upon the earth. 40 days, 40 nights, and every living substance that I have made will I destroy from off the face of the earth. In 7 days. What would you do if God came to you and said, you got 7 days? Would you live different? Yeah, I think most of us would probably live different. 7 more days and judgment's coming. I mean, that's a scary thought. Most people have no clue as to when their end is going to be. It's just sudden, things just happen on a sudden basis. But God's gracious and he gives Noah a warning. Yet 7 days and I will cause it to rain upon the earth. Rain. What's rain? He hadn't seen rain yet, okay? The Bible says that they hadn't seen rain, that there was a mist that came out of the ground to water the plants and the animals and whatever. So here's rain. So God's telling his man, Noah, I'm going to cause it to rain. Noah's got to be real curious. I mean, he's got an idea that water's going to fall from heaven, but he doesn't really know what rain's all about. Anybody here ever been in a hurricane? Tornado? Okay? We lived in Florida, and Hurricane David went through. Rain was horizontal. I mean, the wind was blowing really hard, and the rain was coming just horizontal. And we lived in a house that had a screened-in pool on the outside of the house, in the back of the house. And the screened-in pool the frame was made out of aluminum, okay? Fortunately, it was screened because the wind would blow through it. But, I mean, that thing shook and moved and whatever all over the place. That was a scary thing. God's going to cause it to rain. I believe, it doesn't say, but my personal belief is that it was torrential rain that came down. Came down for 40 days and 40 nights. We were in Hurricane David. I think we were out of power for, a week? Something like that. That was bad enough. 40 days and 40 nights. I can't even begin to imagine that.
Well, you have found a spiritual component there too.
Yeah.
They had never seen rain, so they didn't believe it was going to happen.
Right. They didn't trust in God. Said it, and they didn't believe it. You're right. Verse number 5, and Noah did according to all that the Lord had commanded him. And this backs up what Brother Robert was just saying. You have a choice. God tells us to do things. He makes it clear. He gives us in his word. He gives us his word so that we can understand how we're supposed to live. Okay? You've got a free choice. You can accept that and believe in what he said, or you can question it and doubt and not do what he said. But it's your choice. With choice comes responsibility for the consequences. Okay? And so Noah did according to all that the Lord commanded him. It wasn't selective. He didn't have selective hearing. God told him to do this, do that, do this and that, and he did all. Not some, not partial, but all. Verse number 7, and Noah went in, verse number 6. And Noah was 600 years old when the flood of waters was upon the earth. Keep your finger where you're at. Turn back to chapter 5, verse 32. And Noah was 500 years old, and Noah begat Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Back to where we were at here. Verse number 6 of chapter number 7. And Noah was 600 years old when the flood of waters was upon the earth. There's a 100-year time span here. Different 100 years, a century has passed between the time that Noah begat his children and the time that the flood started. So we're speaking about a specific period of time, and we'll see a little bit later on. Look at verse number 11. Just skip ahead there for right now. In the 600th year of Noah's life, in the second month, the 17th day of the month, the same day were all the fountains of the great deep broken up, and the windows of heaven were opened. This is not a legend. This is not a myth. He gives an exact day. Not only does he give an exact day of when it's going to start, if you turn over to chapter 8, which is the next chapter over, verse number 13, it says, and it came to pass in the 601st year, in the first month, in the first day of the month, where the waters dried up from off the earth. He gives an exact start date. He gives an exact ending date of the flood. He's specific. It's not left up to conjecture or up to guess. It's not a legend. It's not a myth. God's giving specific times, specific events, specific names here. Okay, back to where we were at here. Yet 7 days, 600 years. Okay. Verse number 7. Chapter number 7. And Noah went in, and his sons and his wife and his sons' wives with him into the ark because of the waters of the flood, of the clean beasts and of the beasts that were not clean, and of the fowls and of everything that creepeth upon the earth. There went in 2 and 2 unto Noah into the ark, and the male and the female as God had commanded them. And it came to pass after 7 days the waters of the flood were upon the earth. There are skeptics that are out there. There's always skeptics. And there are skeptics that are out there that say, well, how could Noah and his 3 sons go out into all the world and collect all these different animals, male and female? He didn't collect them. They came to him. There's such a thing called migration. We used to live in Michigan, and we used to like to watch the Canada geese fly from Canada going south and then coming back in the spring and see them in flight in the air in their big V's. Some of you can see them here. And so it's called migration. They have built into them a direction finder, if you will. So they migrated. They came to Noah. Well, he had a hard time driving them into the ark. He didn't drive them into the ark. It said they went in. God was directing these animals to go. So Noah and his sons, I don't believe, had to collect them. They came to him, and they went into the ark. And oh, by the way, God closed the door. Verse number 7, just again, and Noah went in and his sons and his wife's sons with them into the ark because of the waters of the flood. Noah and his wife and his sons and their wives. That's 8 people. We said a week or so ago, the estimated population of the world in 1,656 years from creation, because that's when the flood came, the estimated population could have been upwards of 4 billion people. There are 8 billion people that live on this planet today. And so there have been those that have estimated 4 billion. Let's say it was not 4 billion. Let's say it was 2 billion. Still lots of folks. 8 out of many. That's the next distinction. See, there's a distinction between male and female. There's a distinction between clean and unclean. And there's a distinction between those that are saved or rescued and those that are not. The Bible makes it very clear from the book of Genesis, from the first book of the Bible, first chapters of the Bible, that there is a difference to be made. They went into the ark because of the waters of the flood. They heard that judgment was coming. God told them he was going to destroy the earth. He was going to destroy the earth because of sin, and he told them that judgment was coming. It's coming soon. He warned them, just like he warned our friend Adam to not partake of the fruit of the tree in the midst of the garden. He gave him warning in advance. Noah, the Bible teaches us, was 120 years in building the ark, and he was a preacher of righteousness. So he was building and he was preaching and he was talking to those that were around him, warning them of what's to come. This book is God's warning of what's to come. More than a third of this book is prophecy as of what's to come. A prophet foretells of what's going to happen in the future. Many, many things that have been prophesied in the Bible have already come true, but there's many more yet to come true. Bible's history accuracy rate so far has been 100%, and it will continue to be 100%. So God's warning them through Noah, judgment's coming. What you do with the warning is up to you. God's coming. He's coming again. Read John 14, 1, 2, and 3. And it'll clearly let you know that God's coming again to receive his people unto himself, that where he is, there we may be also. Verse number 11 we read already, but let's read it again. In the 600th year of Noah's life, in the second month, the 17th day of the month, the same day were all the fountains of the deep, great deep broken up, and the windows of heaven were open. The fountains of the deep broke up, and the windows of heaven were open. Anybody remember a little event a number of years ago out in, I believe it was Oregon or Washington State, called Mount St. Helens? It was a volcano that blew its top, blew out a whole bunch of the land around it, created a big caldera, or even bigger caldera than what it was. When that volcano went up, it shot up into the air, what? Rocks, dust, ashes, whatever. And that rock, that dust, that ashes that fell up there, water would condense around those individual little particles. What happened with that water that condensed is it got heavy and it fell. We know that as rain. We said before that they hadn't had rain yet. The fountains of the deep were broken up. The word broken up means to rend or to rip or to tear. The earth's crust was split apart, was broken up. Fountains of the deep are not just water. Fountains of the deep can also be lava. And we know what happens when lava erupts. Cataclysmic event. Verse 12, and the rain was upon the earth 40 days and 40 nights, and the self-same day entered Noah and Shem and Ham and Japheth, the sons of Noah, and Noah's wife and the three wives of his sons with them into the ark. God sending judgment upon the earth in Noah's day. He's forewarned them. He's told them what's coming. And many have heard but have ignored the warning. God takes them and he invites them to come into the ark. He doesn't force them, and they come into the ark. They accept his invitation. What's salvation all about? Judgment's coming. God's given an invitation. What you do with that invitation, that's up to you. But there are consequences of that invitation. Verse number 14, they and every beast after his kind, and all the cattle after their kind, and every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth after his kind, and every fowl after his kind, every bird of every sort. And they went in unto Noah into the ark, 2 and 2 of all flesh, wherein is the breath of life. And they that went in male and female of all flesh, as God had commanded him. And the Lord shut him in. They went in as the Lord had commanded them. Okay. After his kind, if you notice verse number 14, it says after his kind 3 different times. Every beast after his kind, cattle after their kind, and the things that creepeth upon the earth after his kind. We talked before about kind. Kind is a family of animals, family that interbreed one with another. There's a dog kind, different canines, anywhere from a wolf that lives up in the northern reaches of North America and even into Asia and Russia and that. There's a wolf, and there's all kind of different sizes, different colors, and different shapes of canine types. We've talked about this before. You can have a St. Bernard, and you can have a Chihuahua. They're all of the same kind. They're all dogs. Chickens are the same way. You still raise chickens? Yeah, you know you got different kinds of chickens. I mean, they come up with all kind of different flavors of chicken, some with naked neck, and I mean, some of them are really ugly and some of them are really, really, really pretty. But guess what? They're all chickens. God sent them in after their kind, after their family. And there's variations within a kind. Different colors, different sizes, different shapes.
I believe that also explains why there are different, they say, they call them races, but they're not races, they're different features of people, like Asians look different than Africans, and that's where they came from. All the genes were in Adam when God created.
Yes, the Bible clearly states that we are the product of Adam and Eve, ultimately, or from Noah and his sons. Very narrow. We are of one race. And made of one blood, exactly. So there are some people that are darker than me, some people that are lighter than me, some people that are taller than me, some people that are shorter, some people that have different eye shapes, whatever differences, but we're all human beings. We're all of one race. I won't even get into what I'm thinking.
Races and evolutionary terms.
Yes.
Most evolutionists believe there are as many as 5, 6, 7 different races. And just like they're wrong with everything else.
Just like they believe that there's 62 different sexes. Oh, me. The fountains of the deep were broken up, come up from below, and the windows of heaven were open, come down from above. So mankind and earth was caught somewhere in the middle. And the rain was upon the earth 40 days and 40 nights, the self-same day. We read that. Okay, where am I at here? Oh, verse number 17. And the flood was 40 days upon the earth, and the waters increased and bare up the ark, and it was lift up above the earth. And the waters prevailed and were increased greatly upon the earth. and the water went upon the face of the waters. Verse number 19, and the waters prevailed exceedingly upon the earth, and all the high hills that were under the whole heaven were covered. 15 cubits upward did the waters prevail, and the mountains were covered. There's a progression here. Let's see what the progression looks like in detail. Verse number 17, the waters increased. Verse number 18, the waters prevailed and were increased greatly. Verse number 19, prevailed exceedingly. 15 cubits upward, verse number 20, did the waters prevail. The waters are coming up and coming down from above, and they're growing. Anybody here ever been in a flood, a small flood, a localized flood? No? I've been in a small flood in my lifetime, and it's a scary thought because you're standing there and the waters start to rise. And as they start to rise, you get a little panicky, but then when it starts to rise quickly, fastly, and it starts to come up, it's a frightening thing because you can't control it. You don't know when it's going to stop. You don't know where it's going to take you. And these waters have to come up. There are skeptics, again, who say that the ark could not have floated. It was approximately 450 feet long, which is a football field and a half long. It was 45 feet high, 75 feet wide. It's a big boat, and it's made out of wood. Not only is it made out of wood, but it's got a cargo inside. And they say it'd be too heavy to float. That's interesting. I did a little study on buoyancy. Buoyancy is according to the Archimedes principle. Archimedes' principle says the weight of a floating object in water is equal to the weight of the water displaced. When it sits down in the water, it pushes water away. Therefore, it's buoyant, it floats. So how heavy would an ark of those dimensions be? Well, there have been many different estimates, but a high estimate would be that Noah's ark weighed 22,750 tons. That's a lot of weight. How could something that big float? Well, it's interesting. Have anybody ever seen on a documentary the modern day oil tankers? Modern day oil tankers weigh somewhere in the neighborhood of 320,000 tons. Not 32,000, but 320, almost 10 times as much. How about an aircraft carrier? Aircraft carriers weigh about 100,000 tons. I looked up a luxury liner, 220,000 tons. Now, I'm not really super bright, but I can tell you that wood floats, iron doesn't. So if these things that are made out of iron and steel are as huge as they are and many, many times more heavy can float, I don't think God's got any problem with a wooden boat floating. Just to put something in your thought process.
I believe I read somewhere where it said too, a lot of modern day ships are built using the same ratio.
They are. We used to, I think I said this before, but we used to live in Michigan, and we'd go up the river between two Great Lakes, and we would watch the ore freighters coming down from the north, going south, going towards Pittsburgh to dump off iron ore and coal and whatever. And they were the same basic shape. They were long and narrow and not too high, but held a tremendous capacity. It turns out that Noah's Ark was so far advanced that it wasn't equaled in size until 1858. Now think about that a minute. We read about the Nina and the Pinta and the Santa Maria crossing across the ocean. They would have been, little lifeboats on the ark. I mean, they would be really, really small. God knows what he's doing. The waters prevailed. Verse number 21, all flesh died that moved upon the earth, both of fowl and of cattle and of beasts and of every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth, and every man. There was no parole. There was no second chance. God had given him second chance. He'd given him direction, has been patient for 120 years while the ark was building, and they still refused. There comes a point in time where God's had enough. And when he's had enough, that's it. Judgment's coming. Verse number 22. All in whose nostrils was the breath of life, and all that was in the dry land died. And every substance, every living substance was destroyed upon the face of the ground, both man and cattle, creeping things, fowl of the heaven, and they were destroyed from the face, they were destroyed from the earth. And Noah only remained alive, they that were with him in the ark. I believe that the ark is a picture of what's going to come. Those that are in the ark, those that are saved, those that are rescued, will ride out the storm of God's judgment below. They'll ride it out above. And I believe that that's a story of the rapture. God's own will be taken out of here before judgment has come upon this earth. And we'll be able to praise God right out the storm below by being with him in the ark in heaven. Not literally in a boat, but be with him in heaven.
Well, can I ask a question? I don't know myself. I thought about it a bit. It specifies here that everything on the dry land died. Why was not marine life included in the
I have no idea. I've wondered the same thing myself. But marine life is of two basic forms, is it not? There's marine life that breathes water, takes their oxygen from the water, not distills it, but whatever the process is, it brings it in and goes over the gills and takes the oxygen out of the water. And then there are those that breathe air, whales and dolphins and whatever. I don't see anywhere where whales were on the ark or dolphins were on the ark. I don't know the answer to that one. That's one of those ones that I don't think we're ever going to know until we get into heaven.
I wondered if it could have something to do with sin. Because if you think about it, the ocean, marine life, it's kind of like two different planets on one planet.
Yeah.
Man doesn't live below. Man lives on the dry land. That's where the curse took place. That's where man touched it.
I don't think that the animals were being cursed. I think they were just being preserved. Man was being cursed because of sin, so it was man's destruction the Lord was after, not the animals. That's my opinion.
In either event, God saved a remnant, whether it be a remnant of animal life or of human life. He saved a remnant. Those animals that lived in the water, whether they be air-breathing animals or water-breathing animals, God left a remnant of them too, because if you look at fossil life that's spread throughout the world, a lot of fossils are actually fish that are buried in sediment and have become fossilized over time. So there was, if you want to call it judgment, there was death in the waters as well as there was on the land. I don't know. I believe God just spared a remnant because he started all over again. In essence, that's what he did.
It's one of those things that's not worth arguing about. It's just,
Right.
I think about things like that.
Yeah, I do too. I have a weird bent. I think about strange things sometimes. Verse number 24, and the waters prevailed upon the earth 150 days. That's half a year. 150 days, a little less than half a year. Chapter 8, verse 1, God remembered Noah and every living thing and all that was in the ark, was with him in the ark. And God made a wind to pass over the earth, and the waters assuaged. Look down at verse number 2. The windows of heaven were stopped, and the rain from heaven was restrained. Verse number 3, and the waters returned from off the face of the earth continually. And after the end of 150 days, the waters were abated. Verse number 4, and the ark rested upon the 7th month and the 17th day of the month in the mountains of Ararat. Verse number 5, and the waters decreased continually from the 10th month and the 10th day of the first, in the 10th month on the first day of the month were the tops of the mountains seen. And it talks about the waters, it talks about them being assuaged, being stopped, being restrained, being returning from off the face of the earth, abating, decrease. The waters were brought up before. We said that there was an increase of water. The flood was rising and coming up in the air, coming up on land, and the ark floated and the mountains were covered. So it was a growing amount of water. But then what comes up goes down, and God gradually withdrew it.
I mean, you look at that water, you know, if you use a 22-inch cubic, which is, probably speaking of it, that was 27.5 feet.
Right.
Above the highest mountain.
Right.
That's how much water.
Yeah, the question is, where did it go? Because it was covering all the mountaintops, is what the Bible says. Where did that water go?
I have a hypothesis.
Okay.
Before the flood, it's possible that the mountain ranges were much lower than they are now. And during the flood is when all this catastrophic event takes place, and volcanoes going off, the landmass being pushed up high.
Right.
And then that created pools for the water to collect in, and the mountains stood above the water. So the mountain ranges that we see now were not there before the flood.
No. And not only were they not there, but the land structure was not like it is today. I mean, if you look at a globe, it's pretty easy to see where South America and Africa fit together. I mean, it's not too much of a stretch. And I believe personally, and I don't know why I believe it, but I just do, that there was one landmass before the flood. And that when the breaking up of the fountains of the deep was the crust of the earth was breaking up and moving. The other thing is the waters assuaging and coming down, abating. You ever see what happens when water rushes pretty fast through a narrows? It digs things. It digs through rock. It's not necessarily just the water that digs through rock, but the waters themselves were full of sediments, full of abrasives, and they would cut out. Mount St. Helens, when it erupted, there was a lake, I can't remember the name, Spirit Lake? Off of Mount St. Helens. When it erupted, it knocked, a wind force came out of the eruption, and that wind force came down and blew down trees, big, tall trees. I mean, just ripped them up by the roots and pushed them forward. And trees in Spirit Lake, which was also emptied, the water mixed with the trees and pushed it forward, and it was an abrasive. It cut through rock. It turns out that it cut a canyon. The canyon is roughly 1/10 of the dimensions of the Grand Canyon, and it did it in a matter of days. Not millions of years, but days.
And also there were layers of sediment similar to what you see in the Grand Canyon also.
Exactly.
Brother Hugh, before we leave, or just put over chapter 7, in the first part of chapter 8, if you have a pen and a pencil, if you write this down, you'll realize what I'm saying. In chapter 7, verse 11 and verse 24, if you write those down, chapter 7, and verse 11, chapter, and then the verse 24. Then look at chapter 8, verse 3 and 4. These are some of the most important verses in Genesis if you want to study prophecy. Without these, you cannot make prophecy balance out.
Right.
So if you use these, you will. Let me get a little flavor on it.
Right,
without that, you'll never interpret prophecy. I mean, not my saying, this is the law of first mention.
right.
We gotta have this. Let me go over that again right quick, I think we need to get this, if we wanna study prophecy. In chapter 7, verse 11, verse 24, and chapter 8, verse 3 and 4, from May the 17th till October the 17th was 150 days, our 5 days, our 5 months, our 30 days to the month, our 360 days to the year, excuse me. So just a lot be dug into.
Yeah,
And I've read after some pretty good writers, pretty smart people, and this is what they agree on. And
yeah,
it is the law of first mention
right.
in the Bible, that's what we go by. Another thing you did with chapter 7, verse 1 there, said come in. And immediately my mind runs to Revelation 4 and 1.
Yeah,
We go up, okay?
yeah.
So I'm gonna be quiet, but you get me started.
Come up hither. Yeah,
I'm not trying to add what he said, but I think what he's saying is God's prophetic clock is 360 days, not 365.
right, right. Yeah, and a year is comprised of 30-day months. Okay. Verse number 4, and we will be done, I think. What time is it? No, not quite. And the ark rested in the 7th month on the 17th day of the month in the mountains of Ararat. Notice it says the mountains of Ararat. It doesn't necessarily say Mount Ararat, but in the area, in the region thereof, okay? The waters decreased continually until the 10th month. In the 10th month of the first day of the month were the tops of the mountains seen. And it came to pass at the end of 40 days that Noah opened the windows of the ark which he had made. And he sent forth a raven, went to and fro until the waters were dried up off the earth. And he sent forth a dove from him to see if the waters were abated from off the face of the ground. And the dove found no rest for the sole of her feet, and returned unto him in the ark, and the waters were on the face of the earth, on the face of the whole earth. Then he put forth his hand and took her and pulled her back into the ark. Notice that the waters were upon the face of the whole earth, not a local flood, not an event that was just in the Middle East, the whole earth. Do you think God knows what the whole earth means? He said the whole earth. That means all. All of it. Either you believe what he said or you don't believe what he said. I mean, it's pretty simple. And put forth his hand.
Books years ago, and I've read books where it didn't say what you were saying. They said it's part of the here's all of it.
Yeah, the whole earth. Yeah, because there are many that say, well, you know, the...
Bought the book at Baptist bookstore. I kind of believed it, but I got a little further in the scripture, I found they were lying, they were talking about something.
Yeah, there's all kind of flavors of Baptists. Some don't even believe in the resurrection. Verse number 10, he stayed yet another 7 days and sent forth the dove out of the ark. The dove came in unto him in the evening, and lo, in her mouth was a olive leaf plucked off. So Noah knew that the waters were abated from off of the earth. And he stayed yet another 7 days, sent forth the dove, and returned not again unto him any more. And it came to pass in the 601st year, in the first month, in the first day of the month, the waters were dried up from off the earth, and Noah removed the covering of the ark and looked, and behold, the face of the ground was dry. Can you imagine what it would have been like to be in that vessel for over 300 days with your family, with all these animals? You've been tossed about, you've been floating all over the place, the boat comes to rest. It takes well over a month for the land to dry out, and you're waiting, and now you open the door for the first time in all that time frame. Imagine what that would be like.
Feel special today.
Yeah.
I couldn't shoot it, I'll be honest.
Amen. There's not much meat on them anyway. The ark came to rest after all that time frame. When Noah went into the ark and his family, what we read about earlier today, they went into the ark, and there was the earth as Noah and his family knew it. 300 and some odd days later, they open the door of the ark and they go out, and it's a new and it's a different world. God had brought judgment, and as he brought judgment, he changed everything. He wiped away all that defiled, and he opened up a new world for them to come into. God's coming again, and in the book of 2 Peter chapter 3, he's going to destroy the world again a second time, but it's going to be with fire this next time. And there will be a new world, a new beginning. Verse number 15, and God spake unto Noah, saying, Go forth of the ark, thou and thy wife and thy sons' wives, and thy sons and thy sons' wives with thee. Bring forth unto thee every living thing that is with thee of all flesh, both of fowl and of cattle and of every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth, that they may breed abundantly in the earth, and be fruitful and multiply upon the earth. And Noah went forth, and his sons and his wife and his sons' wives with him. Every beast, every creeping thing, every fowl, whatsoever creepeth upon the earth, after their kind, went forth out of the ark. And Noah builded an altar unto the Lord, and took every clean beast and every clean fowl, and offered burnt offerings on the altar. God had spared a remnant, a few. He spared Noah and his family. Out of the whole world's population, he saved only 8 people. That's a very, very small remnant. Percentage-wise, I don't even know what it would be. It would be very, very small. What's the first thing that they do? They build an altar to give thanks, to give praise, and to ask for forgiveness of sin, because it's a burnt offering that they give upon the altar. Verse 21, and the Lord smelled a sweet savor, and the Lord said in his heart, I will not again curse the ground any more for man's sake, for the imagination of man's heart is evil from his youth. Neither will I again smite any more every living thing as I have done. While the earth remaineth, and seed time, and the harvest, and cold, and heat, and summer, and winter, and the day and night shall not cease. God's given a promise. Next week we'll read about that promise, that there's a token or a symbol or a sign of that promise. And that promise, that sign, God created it. He created it out of natural things, the water with light shining through it. It's called a rainbow. That symbol is God's symbol. That symbol is not what some say that it represents today. It's God's symbol, and they try to usurp it for the LGBTQRX, whatever the rest of the numbers are. Okay? Let's close in prayer. Brother Doyle, happy birthday, and will you close us in prayer, please?